Marriage and money. Yeah, marriage and money. I want you to destroy your life or legacy or family by making certain marriage mistakes when it comes to money. This is kind of a warning. This isn't about too many people are fighting, and if they could just understand these key things, it helps them get on the same page. And here's the deal. Have a whole lot more fun. So, money, like whoever thought 6 inches could be so destructive? No girl I ever dated. I mean, I guess it could be more disappointing if we're Canadian. Yeah, I start with a joke. Come on, hope you got a good laugh. Here's the things we're going to cover. People fight because of not operating as a team, and that happens because they don't understand each other's money persona. We're going to talk about the shadow versus winning personas and how you can get on the same page, because the universe kind of has this sick joke. You don't marry the same money persona. You're marrying someone and you're learning from them. It's part of the laws of attraction. But what we really want to address is the productivity conundrum. There's so many people that when they're dating, they have the best time, and then they get married, and all of a sudden this responsibility kicks in. I've got to provide for my family, whoever that breadwinner is. And now all of a sudden, if they feel like they're behind or they need more or they make mistakes or have a setback, they think, oh, I'm just going to work harder. But working harder actually creates stress in a marriage, because often people won't share with their spouse what they're going through because they don't want to scare them. And they really promise the safety and stability. So how do you get past that conundrum and have a better situation that doesn't lead to scarcity and isolation and hard work and marital strife? Now, here's another thing, and this is like kind of a secret to my marriage. Look, I don't have all the answers, but I have been married for 22 years, and we're deeply and madly in love and really in the best place of our relationship, and I owe a lot of it to the very things I'm going to teach here. And I'm going to be honest, we haven't always had the best relationship. At year 7, 8, and 9, I'd made some pretty drastic mistakes with our finances. I got over-leveraged in real estate. I started a hard money lending fund where I was financing these real estate projects and developments and had over 100 properties. And that's not what my wife was asking for, but I was just like, oh, we got to have more. I got to build this net worth. I thought, oh, it's really going to set my family up. But I was never present. I was always working on the next deal. I took my wife to Tempe, Arizona, and we were on the Los Ventana Resort, this beautiful resort. It was perfect weather. She wanted to go out to the pool, but I was like, well, I got to make a few phone calls. I'm talking to attorneys. I'm talking to bankers. And then I took her shopping, but I could buy her stuff, and she was trying on clothes, but I was on the phone the whole time. It was like we were gaining money, but not gaining wealth, and there's a key distinction there. And a lot of it's because people don't have the right mindset, first and foremost, but second, we're going to talk about a proper account structure that allows you to live wealthy along the way while still being prepared for the future, and that's the key. Now, some of the secrets that my wife and I have come up with is like always having something on the books to look forward to. We're going to talk about how to do that. A lot of people don't have weekly meetings and go over the finances and using something called mindful cash management. Most people don't love budgeting. I think budgeting kind of sucks. It's a game of reduction and scrimping and sacrificing and delaying and deferring, and it's a source of contention. I was such a budgeter when we first got married. We were constantly fighting over money. Why are you spending money here? Why is the heating bill this high? Like, I was such a miser that I'm lucky that my wife had patience to get to the other side. Now that we use mindful cash management and use something called the Living Wealthy account and having a peace of mind fund, it's been a game changer, because we don't have to budget. We just pay ourselves first, live off the rest, and then we just classify our expenses into destructive ones we want to get rid of. That's borrowing to consume or paying for something you're not utilizing. Lifestyle expenses, which are the things that we enjoy, going out to eat, obviously paying for a house or, clothes and things like that, but it's just making sure we pay cash. But then there's protective expenses. You're all in store for financial surprises sometime in your life. It's just, will you be prepared for those financial surprises, or could they derail you? Well, once we address protective expenses, how to transfer risk with insurance and asset protection, or for business owners, corporate structure, and really just having education and even liquidity, it creates a different mindset once you know you have a peace of mind fund, especially if your partner is all about safety and stability and you're about growth. How can you live in harmony? We're going to talk about that. And then finally, one of the big mistakes is just not having a vision for the marriage. We know in business, everyone talks about having a vision, having values, having mission statements, having regular meetings. There's just certain things that happen in business that often don't translate to marriage because we just don't think about that with family. It's kind of an afterthought, and maybe we've given the best to our job that day or our business, and we get home and we're tired, and our spouse is just wanting to know where we're at and what's going on and what the future plans are. So We're going to talk about having a vision for the marriage. We're going to talk about having certain rhythms and habits that create ease and simplicity and that help you to master your money and manage it properly. So in this, let's just start with like some momentum and some fast money. Money loves that momentum. Let's talk about the 4-part Wealth Accelerator framework. The first part of the Wealth Accelerator framework, let's see, let me grab the pen here. Okay, the first part is really co-creation. And in a marriage, this is key. Co-creation is, if I have an idea, I want to share it with my wife and say, does this make sense? Or when should we implement this? And she's a fact finder. She likes the details, and she pulls that out because I might start a project without even knowing what materials we need and just want to go to the store. She's like, wait, is this even a project that needs to be done? But co-creation with finances is what makes you each feel stable? What is it that makes you feel fulfilled? What is it that you want? You know, just for Valentine's Day, we sat down and we created this really cool bucket list. Like, what do we want to do in the next 12 months? And what would we have to do to be able to pay for that and have that be a responsible thing? And so we went through this whole co-creation process. But the second thing is we have to eliminate. What do we have to eliminate? Well, bad investments. Bad investments are one person's on board, the other isn't. And so part of that due diligence and research process might be, is it the right investment for you? Because risk isn't in the investment, it's in you, the investor. And if one of you doesn't understand it, and it leads to restless nights, I don't care if it's even earning 20%. If you can't sleep and it's destroying your health and you lower your energy, that's not a good thing. That marital strife, is it worth that chased return that may or may not be sustainable? So it's really about eliminating things that create scarcity. That happens from a lack of communication. That happens from being over committed to the grind and not enough to quality of life. And then it's really discovering investor DNA. What kind of investor are you? What kind of investor is your spouse? My wife has a certain amount of money that if we have saved, then she feels like, hey, if we want to do a project in the business or do something new that might take a little bit of money, might take longer than I usually think it will, she's on board because she has that safety net. She has that thing that makes her feel peace of mind, and I want to be in that cohesive unit together. Or it might be in this elimination, just getting rid of speculation and risk. There's these two things that you've heard over and over when it comes to investing: fear and greed. Fear comes playing not to lose, holding on to what you got. Oh, scared of doing anything. It leads to paralysis. It leads to thinking, oh, we've got to take what we can while we can, and we just got to pinch so hard that we get blisters on our fingers. Play to win, on the other hand, is always about the future, and it's always about getting something, getting somewhere at the expense of today quite often. And that's where that greed comes in. Man, I remember the greed gland kicked in once. I was sitting at a wedding. I was actually in the wedding line, and the person next to me in the wedding line was like, we were groomsmen. He's like, man, you do a lot in real estate. Why don't you get paid by raising money in real estate? Because you're doing that anyway, but you're not being paid on it. You're missing out on hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. I was like, oh my God, I'm missing out on all this money. And my little feeble 20-year-old mind was like, I've got to start making money on that. And the greed took over. It became speculation. It became something that wasn't really aligned with my purpose. It became something that was a drudgery. But why? Just because there was money to be made. But it was a distraction. And that's a hard thing sometimes, is discern the truth from falsehood, of distraction versus opportunity. Every distraction is disguised as an opportunity. Chasing some return without having a good premise or plan. Going for something because someone else said they're making a ton of money in it, and then it's too late, and then it starts to dip because we don't know what we're doing. This creates a lot of marital stress. So the third thing is, once you kind of know what you're doing, then it's about delegating. And let's talk about this with a financial team. It's building a plan, and then build a team, having the right attorney, having the right accountant, having the right investment advisor, the right insurance people, or the cash flow specialist, the people that we can utilize their expertise, but we don't over rely on it. A lot of people don't delegate. They do what I call relegate. What's relegate mean? It means I hand something over, don't think about it, shirk my responsibility, hope for the best, and if it doesn't work out, I guess it's not my fault, it's their fault. If they don't know the conditions of satisfaction, if it's not part of a plan I developed, then ultimately, how am I really going to get good returns on that? People do this with money all the time. Ask them where they're invested. They don't really know. What's their exit strategy? Not quite sure. How do they protect the downside? Don't really have an answer. They're just in it for the long haul, they say, or the market's on sale, so they're buying more, or they heard about this from a friend or a family member or someone that they think is smarter than them. Look, this is a game, really, when it comes down to it, of collaboration. Money is a game of collaboration, but it begins with what you want. What do you want to create? You know, for me, when I sit down with my wife, I'm like, I want you to feel financially stable and secure. And for us, I think that if we create financial independence where we have recurring revenue that comes in and month out, or year in and year out, we still manage it and monitor it in order to maintain it. But we want cash flow, because if it's not cash flow coming in, then I'm forced to work to earn money versus it's a choice of what I do. So collaboration is pulling that whole team in together. Maybe delegation is as you start to build momentum and you have profitability, then you can hire the right accountant. Then you can start there. You can get an attorney and not just, try to use ChatGPT to build something like that, or, just print something off online. It's about really having that expertise and utilizing that expertise. But if you don't know what you want, you're probably just going to be sold whatever they offer. And maybe or maybe not, that's really, helpful, or maybe it's not helpful. So really, before we dive into this a little bit deeper, I think it's just important to, we're talking about marriage. Just joke around a little bit, right? Like, people say I look like Jesus, but kind of like old Jesus. I got all this gray hair. I'm a little bit older than him. But I just made mistakes Jesus didn't. I had 2 teenagers. That's right. It's official. They're both teens now. It's pretty gross. I remember the oldest at adolescence, because we'd always play this game. Would you rather? You guys played it? You know it. It's like fun and innocent at first. It was like, would you rather be Superman or Spider-Man? I mean, it was super cute. But then one day, out of nowhere, my oldest asked Dad, would you rather look at a girl's butt or her boobs? Whoa. That told me 2 things. 1, he's becoming a man. 2, can we have some more options, buddy? Because there's some pretty great options down there. Just kidding. Now that he's hit puberty, all the questions have totally changed. The other day, he's like, hey, Dad, do you have sex with Mom every night? I'm like, well, son, I certainly try. I mean, I didn't want to disappoint him. All right, yeah. Marriage, I just think it's probably one of the greatest things is, as far as accomplishments for me, is having a family. I mean, the night I did my comedy special, seeing my kids out there in the crowd, my youngest opening for me, my wife laughing right there in the front row, it felt fantastic. And so I like to bring a little humor into this money game, because I know it can feel serious sometimes. It can feel complicated. It could even feel overwhelming. So hopefully we can make this a little bit more simple, a little bit more understandable and practical, so you could just have a better life. So let's begin with the very first piece, not knowing your money persona. There's really 4 losing games, or 4 what I would call shadow personas. So these shadow personas begins with the miser. The miser plays a game called preservation. And so preservation means they hold on to everything they can, because they're just not sure if it's, if it could slip away. Like I grew up with a family of misers, putting cash in coffee cans and burying it in the cellar. I think they had the first dollar they ever earned. So they might have a lot of money, but you would never know it. They wear the same jeans they had when they were a kid. And that's fine, but if they never utilize the money, what good is it? It's more the mindset. It doesn't lead to prosperity. It doesn't lead to production. It's usually reductionist type of thinking. And there's only a certain amount that we could save. We don't shrink our way to wealth, but a miser believes that's the case. Well, the second money persona, and this has nothing to do with politics, is a conservative. A conservative plays the game of accumulation. So they just, they're always thinking about how can they accumulate more money, but they end up with funds that they can't spend because they're not sure if they're ever going to have enough. So the miser holds on to everything they have. The conservative is more likely to deploy it into a perfectly balanced asset allocation portfolio, put it in a retirement plan, have low-cost funds so that they can keep more. They're really intelligent about all those things, but they don't really have a plan to enjoy it. They're always delaying happiness. They're always one day, someday. Both of these shadow personas are kind of on that play not to lose. So play not to lose is a form of scarcity. The next 2 are more play to win. Play not to lose is more about the past. Play to win is more about the future. And so play to win, first thing you have is a striver. This is where if I'm in a shadow persona, I'm likely to be in my striver persona. Think I can just work harder to make more money, but strivers inevitably burn out. On what the game they play is status. And so in the game of status, again, work hard, make more, do more, have more, grow, that kind of thing. Not that those are bad things. It's just bad when you rob the enjoyment along the way, don't enjoy the process along the way, and never have a chance to be present. Like when I was starting the hard money lending fund and investing in all these real estate properties, but was never around. Didn't really have a high quality of life. The last one on Play to Win is really the high roller. So the high roller plays a game called opportunity. They're great at raising funds, but not always good at making sure those funds are deployed properly. They kind of cut corners, they take shortcuts, and it leads to short-lived riches. So these shadow personas really come from scarcity. There's two forms of that scarcity: playing to win and playing not to lose. So how's playing to win scarcity? Because it's more, bigger, better, faster. It's I'll do anything and sacrifice just for one day, someday, for life to be better. Well, same with the people playing not to lose. I'll just hold on to what I got. And then when I'm finally too old to enjoy it, I'll finally say I'm going to enjoy it. But you create these habits to never quite enjoy it. And it can be quite suffocating. I mean, look, I grew up around misers because my great-grandfather left Italy. He didn't have much money. He couldn't put food on the table. He left his pregnant wife to come to America. They changed his name at Ellis Island because he didn't speak English. He got on a train eating honey bread because it didn't spoil, and eventually made it to East Carbon, Utah. But there was a mine explosion, so there wasn't enough coal mining jobs, so he became a goat herd. Lived in a tent, and I mean, there's a pretty severe winter where he was living, and it took him 7 years to finally get his wife and daughter over to America and have a house for them. 7 years. So that's like folklore that gets handed down from generation to generation. Folklore of scarcity. You never know, if you don't have enough money, you could lose your loved ones. So you got to hold on to everything you got. You got to reduce expenses. You got to budget. You got to conserve. You got to save. You got to scrimp. And it just becomes a way of life. There's no real joy. Money is something to be afraid of instead of something to utilize or, have it bless your life. So it's kind of an unhealthy mindset. The conservatives, a lot of times, they're more like judgmental. Like they know better about your life than you do. You could think of the Susie Orman and the Dave Ramsey type lecturing you for ever spending money. Never have a credit card, never have a loan, pay off your home at all costs. When you do, then you can finally live a life. But by the way, you've learned how to be so conservative, you feel uncomfortable ever utilizing or enjoying your money. They usually neglect cash flow and they wait for the long haul type of investments to eventually pay off one day. The striver is kind of insatiable. No matter how much they make, there's always more to make. And so, yes, they're building a future, but at the expense of today, without enjoyment along the way. It's always, I'm just going to work hard temporarily, but those temporary moments become the habit, become permanent. And the family says, well, great, you can provide this great lifestyle, but you're not in it. What quality of life is there? A high roller is up and down. They might be the life of the party, but they also might be a bit narcissistic, or they might be a one-upper, or a name dropper. At the same time, they might not have done due diligence, and they're always raising funds because it looks like they have the most lavish lifestyle, even if they rented the car that they're saying is this amazing Ferrari, or the Airbnb they pretend is their own. So those come often from like childhood wounds where people are trying to prove themselves. They're either trying to shield their fears of not having enough and play not to lose, or validate themselves by having so much money that people go, oh, they're amazing, and they think that they are their money. They think their self-worth and their net worth is the same thing. And so if you have someone that's play not to lose and you're play to win, there's likely going to be contention, especially if you're not on the same page and communicating and understanding how to create your winning persona. So we already talked about the winning persona creation. It's the acceleration model. Co-create. What do you both want? My wife wants a certain amount of cash. We use it, cash value insurance, for that cash to feel comfortable. I'm completely cool having that for her and for us. Over time, I felt more and more comfortable having that because she knows, like, no matter what, we're going to live in the same home, eat the same food, be able to send our kids to the same school because we have that foundation. In the past, I used to think of it as like I'm the gas and she's the brakes, right? But now I think of it as she's the guardrails so we could accelerate. We just take a little bit more time to understand each other and know what to move forward with and not move forward with, and have her involved in the choices so that we're co-creating this together. So this is how you leverage your winning persona. You get the missing personas and fill in the gaps. So what are those winning personas? Well, a miser becomes a mindful manager. What's a mindful manager? They're detail-oriented. They're efficient. They're great at improving things. They know how to reduce waste. But it's not just looking at their own budget. They're seeing how they can serve others and solve problems and add value, because it's more exponential for creating value for others than just holding on to what you've got. Yes, still be mindful with your cash management. Be responsible with your money, but put yourself out there, because dollars follow value, so you become more of a value creator. So it's that co-creation. It's that delegation. It's that collaboration. The conservative becomes a planner in their winning persona. Planners are stable, thoughtful, strategic people. They monitor the effectiveness and efficiency of any initiative. So think about a CFO for a company. They're usually planners. Are there ways to improve margin? Are there, unnecessary expenses? Are there pro formas that we can have projections to understand what this expense would be, or hurdle rates which say, if it's not going to earn this much, it's not worth our time, or this isn't really worth it because it doesn't provide enough value and it costs too much and takes too much time. Planners are amazing because they ask more how and when. Mindful managers and planners. Now, the striver, their winning persona is the creator. The creator is an artist, an inventor, or an entrepreneur. They lead with innovation and ingenuity, but they have boundaries. They're not just working 24/7 and grinding it out. They have quality of life as part of the consideration. It's not just numbers and status on a piece of paper because you have a big net worth. It's quality of life. It's enjoyment along the way. And you know what? The high roller becomes a catalyst. And so a catalyst is a big thinker. They're a mover and shaker. They're a connector, a visionary, and they show us ways we could win together. If you have a catalyst in your life, they're always referring you. They're telling people great things about you. It's phenomenal. They're so good at initiating things, but they really require mindful managers and planners to create their ideas into reality. But they create the container. They create the vision, which is such a rare commodity. So in your marriage, if you're on the, creator catalyst side, it's actually a gift to have a mindful manager or planner. One person creates the big ideas. The other one says how we can actually implement this and get this done. Again, co-creation, not isolation. That's the key. So know your money persona. You can just go to GarrettGunderson.com, or you can just say Garrett B. Gunderson on Instagram, DM me, quiz, and we'll hook you up so you can figure out your money persona. Have your spouse take it. Get to understand each other. What are your strengths? Where can you help each other out? Where can you be on the same team? Again, my wife is asking a lot of questions. She's doing the fact finding. I'm doing the initiating. Like, here's these ideas. What do you think about this? She's like, how does this work? Even when it comes to like our family, when our kids are having struggles with their health, I'm like, hey, here's some books. Here's some people I met. And she'll research and be like, oh, I actually think this would be really good. Or she'll just go on her own and research and think, hey, this might be really helpful. And so we were able to overcome some pretty big obstacles with our kids by just having her fact finder. But I had all these relationships and people I'd meet, and I'd ask all these questions because I was just good at those things. And then she was good at researching it. It became a team. And the same thing happens with our finances. Before I do something, I have a conversation with her. We get on the same page. She asks more questions so I could think it all the way through. It's a gift, not a curse. It's about communication. We'll talk about how to do that. Now, the second issue or big mistake that it comes to money is this productivity conundrum. Productivity conundrum is just wanting to provide more. But in the pursuit of providing more, maybe we're not as romantic. Maybe we don't take the time for our family. We always have an excuse of why we're busy. And part of why we're busy sometimes is because we just feel like we can never get ahead, or we want to get ahead, or we want to have more, or someone has more than us. And so instead of being that person that takes our spouse on a date or goes on amazing trips and vacations, if you're attached to your phone and your computer and you're constantly working, you got to set some boundaries. Just by setting boundaries, you learn to delegate. You learn to be strategic. Like, one of the things I know is when I set time that we're going to go take a few weeks for a vacation, I get really strategic about what I do or not do right before that. And then I get time to relax and rejuvenate and be with my family and build memories. You can never buy back the memories you never create. And you're not really wealthy if you're not present. If you believe that wealth is some far out future thing, that once you have a certain number on a piece of paper, a certain number of assets in real estate, or your business gets to a certain size, or you get certain awards or accolades, and you lose life along the way, this is why most people get divorced, is they say it's financial. Now, part of that financial constraint is thinking that you have to make so much money in order to be loved. It's like a false belief that we usually adopt at some point, and that's where a lot of people become entrepreneurs, and they try to validate themselves through how much they make. But at the same time, if you lose your family along the way, there's nothing probably more detrimental than divorce to your finances. But is it really wealth if it doesn't feel like fulfillment, happiness, choice, the freedom to go do some things that you want, take some time to yourself, have a hobby? Like if it's all about production, there's a thing called diminishing marginal productivity. And all that really means is when we work so hard that we wear ourselves out and we have less energy, we're getting less done even though we spend more time in it. We're not good delegators in those moments. We think we have to do everything ourselves, and there's a scarcity belief. If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. Well, actually, I think it's funny because people will critique Elon Musk all the time. They'll say stuff like, dude, this guy's not even that smart. It's not like he actually created the stuff. Well, guess what? He created the vision for it. Yes, there were brilliant people that understood how to create the technology behind his ideas, but he set that forth. And I think it's brilliant when you have a team that you grow and build up and then they can help you so that you actually have time to live a life along the way. Not one day, someday when you're 65 or older and you're burnt out and you're exhausted and you've damaged your health and you have no energy left and you've given everything to everyone else. That's the booby prize. You didn't win because you helped everybody else, but you didn't help yourself or your family. This productivity conundrum, that conundrum is thinking that we have to provide at a higher level than is true. Like the great lie I hear people say is, you know what, I'm doing this for you. I said that to my wife once. She's like, I didn't sign up for that. I was killing sacred cows back in 2008, and we're having all these real estate woes at the time. I'm like, I'm doing this for you. And she's like, what do you mean? You're not even around. I'm like a single mom when I go to all these functions. You're always on the road. You're always doing something. You say yes to everything, but you always say no to us. And I'm glad that she fought for that, because I realized if I'm not present, I'm not wealthy. And that it was a story that I had to do the work, and that the real flip was, who can help me do this? How can I create structure that I have time with my family? Like we have 14 days a year where there's just, we go outside of our state, usually outside of the country, and there's no work done during that time. By me, my team does it. I can just be with my family. We went to Italy for a summer. It took me 2.5 weeks to finally be present. I was stressed about the business, looking at the sales channel every day, worried about how it's going without me. And guess what? The team figured it out. They grew up because I wasn't there to micromanage or just take over or try to have a Herculean efforts to make something happen. They learned how to market without me. They ran events without me. We matured. But if I was always there, I was the bottleneck. And I remember it was 2012 where everything kind of changed. I came out of a tough 2008, 2009. 2010 was an amazing year. 2011, we're doing really well. But I had some healing to do with my wife from year 2008 and 2009 because we had 2 young kids and she felt like she was raising them alone, and that I was like had nothing left when I came home, and I was, she was kind of numbing out and I was numbing out because it was just, we're just trying to make ends meet. We were young and there was a lot going on. And finally in 2012, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to show her that she's the priority. So I met with my team and I said, hey, look, I'm only going to speak if I could bring my family with me for this year, for 2012. So I did fewer speeches, but I brought my family with, and we went to some really cool locations and hung out. And I said, I just want to really show my wife that she's the most important thing instead of feeling like she's second to the business or third. And I remember there was a time that year where my CFO was like, look, we'll improve margins. We'll get more strategic. Even if our revenue lowers a little bit, we have some, inefficiencies here I could fix. So we ended up taking home the same money that year. But at that one point she goes, do you need to go to work? I was just around a lot. But it really revolutionized our marriage. It really recharged the marriage. And it really brought back this kind of like this healing process, because then she could trust me, that I would be there, that she was important, that I put my family first. And it's not that it's always easy, because businesses have an insatiable appetite. They require a lot of energy. Jobs can be the same thing. But if we let that become who we are and our identity, we lose the things that we love the most. And it's not an either or, it's an and, but you got to allow other people to support you. See, when my kids were young, they were like little romance terrorists, but now they're actually my best wingman. Like, walk past my room, shut the door on their way by, shoot me a wink, you know. I don't know if that's because what they think I'm about to do with their mom or what's going on in their bedroom that no parent should ever see. But the reality is, like, I'm glad that I have a great relationship with them, and it wouldn't have been that way if I continued on the path of 2008. I really focus on being more present. What would it take for you to be more present? To be able to put the phone away. I just never let the computer be in my bedroom. After a certain time of night, I shut down the technology. I get up early to get some work done when the rest of the family's asleep. Like, what are your rules? Create your rules for prosperous living. See, if the breadwinner just works harder, that hard work starts to feel isolated due to not wanting to have the spouse feel there isn't any instability. They don't want to say, oh, I'm not doing as well as I want. They feel worried, like, what will happen? Have conversations. Co-create. Bring them along for the ride. They're going to feel and sense if things aren't going well, and you being despondent and numb and working harder isn't going to make it better, because you'll be away feeling some guilt and shame for never investing any time with them. And then when you're with them, feeling like, oh, I got too much to do. We create a lot of artificial deadlines. We create a lot of artificial projects. We create a lot of artificial busyness because it makes us feel a little bit safe at times. So get past that scarcity. Do what it takes to create the life that you love. Create the rules that matter for you. So here's some really practical things. Like, the third thing here is, if you don't have a living wealthy account or account structure, then you could just be earning money and feel like it's just paying bills or building your retirement, not benefiting you along the way. So one thing I recommend is a guilt-free spending account. So guilt-free spending account, I might even call it a living wealthy account. I want to always pay myself first, right? So I do a sweep account where I automatically put money into an account. Every time I make a deposit in the bank, it goes into our personal account, and some goes into my, let's call it living wealthy account, and some goes into my peace of mind fund, also known as a wealth capture account. It's where I build at least 6 months liquidity and savings. But this living wealthy account, or this guilt-free spending, is having some money that you can just enjoy. Do you like buying clothes? Do you like going to nice dinners? Do you like taking great trips? Do you like buying certain things for the house, you know, decorating it, or yard, or gardening, or whatever it is? Just that if you're paying yourself first and you've got a certain percentage, then having a percentage that says, remind yourself you're doing the right things, and go all in on the things that matter. You know, and having each account separate, because if you combine accounts, I call that being commingled. If all this goes to one place, well, then it's easy to be spent on things that you're like, I feel like I'm treading water and I'm not getting further ahead. That happens far too often. So what would it take for you to separate out these accounts so that now you have your money not commingled, separated, and utilized properly? Peace of mind fund, get to 6 months liquidity. 6 months of your expenses set aside so that you have some peace of mind in case there's a health issue or a career change or a cash flow challenge or a pandemic or who knows, whatever economic turmoil happens. It's just there. It's not earning a good rate of return. It's just there for your own peace of mind. But then have that living wealthy account. Remember meeting with a client that was worth a ton of money, and he just never spent any money on himself. And I said, hey, we got this great strategy. We're going to save you a bunch of money, but I want you to take 10% of it and just spend it on yourself, or I'm not going to tell you the strategy. It was a big strategy. It was like $100,000 a month. It was like $120,000 a month. He's like, what would I spend it on? And I was like, well, when was the last time you bought new clothes? And so I'd seen him on TV, so he got some new clothes, spent $15,000 at Nordstrom. He loved it. Wrinkle-free shirts, just got super excited. Then months later when I saw him, he put a Nest in his house. He put a whole sound system. It wasn't a very big amount of money compared to what he made, but he just started to enjoy his life along the way. Not just one day, because he's already an older person, but it's like, what are you saving this for? Doesn't have kids. He's not married. He's just sitting around. Like, enjoy life along the way, but also be responsible by having that living wealthy account combined with your wealth capture account. All right, so here's some kind of living wealthy tactics, tricks, secrets that my wife and I have. One is that we always have a trip on the books that we're looking forward to. Could be as simple as a trip to our cabin. It could be a trip to go to a concert, or, go visit a city, or, maybe it's our big trip of the year, but we start to experience it as soon as we book it. In 2009, when we were really struggling financially, I just made the trips to the cabin more fun. Brought our wedding video that we could watch. Just tried to make it special, even though we had to be resourceful to do that. It doesn't always take a lot of money. It takes intention. It just takes having that in your life. Like, date your wife, date your spouse. Create the space to say you're important and, be romantic again. I mean, it's funny, like when we went to Italy the first time, we took our kids because I was like, hey, let's take a romantic trip to Italy. And my wife's like, why don't we bring the kids and make it less fun? Oh, great. They come into the room. They're like, what are you guys kissing for? Stop kissing. Let's watch a movie. I'm glad we came to Italy, kids, to watch a movie. I remember when we got on the flight, I'm like, okay, kids, Mom and I are going to be towards the front. You guys are in the back. And don't bother us unless there's any emergency. By the way, this is an airplane. It's not going to be an emergency. If there is, there's nothing I could do about it. So just let me die in screaming peace. Then my youngest was like, hey, that's no unfair. You guys have lay down seats. I'm like, what are you talking about, Lucky Sperm Club? It's unfair you're on this flight in the first place. You guys know that club? Born on second base, think he hit a double. Anyway, part of the thing I had to flip early on in my life is seeing leisure as a worthwhile activity. Enjoying life along the way. Don't be so net worth focused that you lose the worth of the moment, that you lose the enjoyment along the way. Find the win in the work, but find wins in your life. Like, take little trips that you're waiting for retirement along the way so you don't burn out. The other thing that we do is we always have a weekly meeting. That's a mistake when people don't have a weekly meeting. The things that we cover in this meeting, but look, I'll just give you, if you go to Garrett B. Gunderson and put marriage and money in the DMs, I'm going to give you our agenda. I'm going to give you our quarterly and annual retreats. I'm going to give you interviews with my wife and I, where we were interviewed by different people that, were inspired by what we did with our marriage, and even people that helped us get past that tough 2008, 2009. We went to Chicago, where one of our friends, and I'm his trustee, and he was like, he just has a great marriage. And I invited two other couples I thought had an amazing marriage. They're all older than us. And I said, we just want to learn your best practices. So my wife would ask the women questions. I'd ask the guys. And then my wife and I kind of had like a second honeymoon. He had a penthouse in Chicago. It was super nice. Like, really one of the coolest weeks of our life, because we just had friends that poured into us. But that's where we're like, let's have a meeting weekly so that you always feel like you can bring up what you're concerned about, where we're going financially, if we have any big expenses we need to save up for, what's going on with the kids, where I could support you, how am I doing as a husband, all these questions. I'm going to give those to you. You just go to Garrett B. Gunderson, Marriage and Money, and DM me on Instagram. I'll just hook you up. But, we just, even now we have a meeting and our kids are in the meeting. A lot of times we'll do it like on the drive to the cabin, and we're hanging out in the hot tub so it doesn't feel as formal. We once filmed this meeting because we had so many people being like, that's amazing you do this. And it seemed like it must be so hard or so perfect. And it's funny, my wife was late to the meeting, and there's like over 100 people watching it on a webinar. My kids are cracking jokes. We're having a good time. But we did cover some things that were really important. What are you working on right now? What hobby are you into? What do you want to develop? How's school going? Like, how can I be a better dad? We just had conversation. Communication leads to better living. And part of the reason why people list finance as a big reason for divorce is because when people are strained financially, they stop dreaming. They stop thinking about the future, and they just wish they made better choices than the past. That's where I asked for a do-over with my wife. I made mistakes by being over-leveraged in real estate. Or even worse, when I left the hospital early when my son was hooked up to wires and machines so I could go to work. I asked for a do-over. So if one of us is hangry or temporarily mean or insane, or if we really mess up, we can ask for a do-over, which would acknowledge we'd behave differently if just given the chance to do it all over again. What we said was hurtful or stupid or foolish. Asking for a do-over is a path to healing, and accepting a do-over is an act of lasting forgiveness. So that's one of the things. Where do you need a do-over? What do you want to do over? That's part of the meeting. We don't use them very often. But maybe just like one of us is having a bad day and we snap. It's like, oh, can I have a do-over? It's just like the wall goes down, and we don't bring that up over and over again. And sometimes I just ask my kids inappropriate questions just for fun. Like, hey, who do you love more, me or mom? They try to be all diplomatic. Oh, we could never pick. We love you both the same. So I up the stakes. If I leave her, who are you going to live with? Mom, before I even finish the sentence, in unison even. Can you believe that? I guess don't ask the question if you don't want the answer. Although sometimes they just ask me stuff I'm not prepared to answer. Like the other day, my oldest wanted me to help him text a girl. I'm like, what do I know about texting a 15-year-old girl? Which, that is the right response, by the way, right? Although I realize I do have some friends who date girls closer to my son's age than their own, and they might know what to text, so I had to create a rule for these friends. If I take the girl's age that they're dating and combine it with their own, if that sounds like a time of war, we can't be friends anymore. 1836, no. 1942, please. 1776, your ass is going to jail, my friend. All right, just a little humor to break this up, but now let's get into the mindful cash management. Because when people don't have mindful cash management, they get far too into budgeting and restraint and reduction. And maybe it's because one person's so growth-oriented, the other person never feels stability. Or the other person always feels like they're told no because they're always trying to grow and the other person doesn't believe in them. Part of this comes from a lack of vision in the marriage. Like, my vision for my marriage is to be a premier romantic and an extraordinary husband. That's my vision. As soon as I had that vision, I hosted one of our anniversaries with the quartet, and we played our wedding video because we had a funny video, and everybody laughed. And then I had everybody write notes of their best practices in marriage, and we hung out with 13 couples, a bunch of our friends, and it was just an amazing night. Stayed in the same room that we stayed from the night we got married. We just, it's like, that's what a pure romantic would, but that's a vision. What's your vision? So mindful cash management is, I want to go all in on those moments, but I don't want to go all in on buying stuff that doesn't matter. So eliminate anything destructive, manage any lifestyle expense, go all in on our guilt-free, value-based spending, address our protective expenses, and increase our productive ones, investing in ourselves, increasing our energy, so really investing in our health. That's something that we really do. Great quality experiences with relationships because connection matters. So what do you want in your marriage? What would a date night look like? Are you having them regularly? How could you do that? If you focus only on the past without creating a better future, that's a surefire way to destroy a marriage. So look, you might have a different money persona. Have the weekly meeting. Ask each other. I have these questions I asked my wife on a different Valentine's Day where I was like, what was money like growing up? How do you view money? What about money is important to you? What's your first memory of money? Was it good or bad? I just wanted to understand how she viewed things and what mattered to her. And it was super helpful. And then she asked the same. Another thing little thing that came to my mind is I always like to revisit our best moments and relive them on our dates. Remember this? This is what was going through my mind when we were dating. Remember this trip that we took? Remember this thing that we did? And we get to re-experience those. And I have a whole wall down right outside of my gym. It's just all these great memories that I can walk by. It's what an Italian would do, right? Just have no white space on the wall. And it's the only wall I really get in the house. But it's just I saw my wife looking at it just yesterday. There's just so many good memories. So what would it take to create good memories? Have those date nights, have those regular meetings, get on the same page with your finances. Look at how you could co-create together versus feel isolated. If you're feeling scared or things aren't working out or you made a mistake, own it, apologize for it, learn from it, grow from it. So it is funny that my son asked me to text because I've never been much of a texter, but when my wife and I got married, texting wasn't even a thing. So when he's like, hey, will you help me text this girl? I said, I've never sexted my wife properly, so I decided to do it. Now I'm an author. I know how to write. I've sent flirty texts in the past, but I really, really wanted to rock her world and surprise her, so I started working it, right? Kiss and nibble. And look, you get the picture. It was probably the best writing I've ever done. 20 minutes later, I finally had the courage to finish and a little bit nervous, but I hit send. I'm just staring at the phone, wondering what's going to happen. And I see those magical 3 little dots appear. Maybe she'll say something dirty or send a picture. My imagination was going wild. Finally, the response comes back. K. No, that's it. Just K. Lowercase even. I send her my deepest desire. She sends me K. Well, it wasn't a no, and I'm kind of an optimist. So I figured at least I could drive home quickly and deliver a no if she couldn't type it in, if you know what I'm saying. Now, when I get home, my wife's standing on the front porch to greet me, but she just looked happy. No, she doesn't look happy at all. Her arms are folded. She's kind of tapping her foot. There's like a scowl on her face. I'm like, babe, what's up? She's like, well, sometimes your sons have my phone. So you might as well go upstairs and get changed because they think we're all eating out tonight. Look, money isn't the real reason for divorce. It's just losing excitement for the future. So if you just understand your winning money persona and your spouses, you could become more of a team. Don't get caught in the productivity conundrum. Communicate. Talk to them. Be present. Be romantic. You know, when breadwinners work harder, they feel isolated because they don't want to have their spouse feel there's any instability. But that isolation is scarcity, and it can be so destructive and create a splinter in the relationship. Build your living wealthy account and the rest of the account structure, you know, the wealth capture or peace of mind fund. Separate those accounts. Then have something on the books to look forward to. If you're not in a great financial position, how could you be more resourceful? If not, like if you have the money, then put something on the books and start enjoying it today. See leisure as a worthwhile activity. Don't just focus on your net worth. Have a weekly meeting. Go over your finances. Go over how you're doing. Ask my wife on a scale of 1 to 10, how am I doing? If it's a 10, man, that's amazing. Sometimes it's a 9. I'm like, what's the one thing I've done that's really upset her or bothers her? If it's an 8, I'm probably in trouble. And if it's a 7, we're in real trouble, right? Because that's what the real scale is. So I'm always like, well, what would it take to get to a 10? And then we can talk through it and have it during a meeting. So get your vision for your marriage. Focus on an exciting future. Dream again. Money isn't the real reason for divorce. Again, it's the losing excitement for the future. So if you think that the weakness or issue can be flipped into a strength, the way to do that's through communication, through getting aligned, through setting up accounts, through having weekly reviews, from, you know, working towards big purchases, but being deliberate together, value-based spending, guilt-free spending, and then forget about the rest, right? Have something on the books to look forward to. You're not going to shrink your way to wealth. You're not going to isolate your way to wealth. You're not going to cut back your way to wealth. So look at your marriage as a key to wealth, getting there together. It's part of your legacy. So in conclusion, we have to ask, what would money Jesus do? And again, I look like Jesus. I just made mistakes that he didn't. My 2 teenagers, right? As I said, my wife has always had this rule. We don't spank our kids. But that was before we went through COVID and homeschooling. It's amazing. Every time they misbehave, she's like, handle your kids. My kids, when they misbehave, but I still can't spank them? No. So I sat them down and I said, look, you kids better behave, or I'm going to have to beat your mother. She wasn't even mad. She's like, I'll take a chop to the throat if you get them to shut the hell up. I'm kidding, of course. That is definitely not what Jesus would have done. He would not have had kids. So pay yourself first. Set up multiple bank accounts. Have your weekly meeting. Have your living wealthy account. Work together and emphasize the strengths. Know your money persona on the winning side. Dream. Talk about it on your date nights. Ask questions. Where do you have similar interests? Go all in on those. But also have your separate hobbies. Have a friend you can trust and share when you need. Well, this is the final thing. My wife told me this, and I'll never forget. She said, hey, if we get in a fight, don't go tell your parents. I won't tell mine, because we'll get over it and they won't. So have a trusted person that you can talk through if the emotions are bottled up, and then you can come back to your spouse and get to a good place. Money can be complicated, but it doesn't have to be divisive. Do the work, and prosperity will follow.